Hello everyone, joining us today is Jacques Dekock, Group Director of Technology at TFG, a visionary leader driving innovation in retail through transformative data strategies and cutting-edge AI solutions. From building omni-channel digital platforms like Bash.com to shaping the future of tech-enabled retail, Jack brings unmatched expertise in balancing traditional operations with modern digital demands. Welcome, Jack. Thank you, Jack, for being here on our podcast, Neural Networking with Konverge. And I'm ready to ask you a set of questions based on your experience in the CIO space, in data space, in AI space, and of course, your domain, the retail that you had been working for all these years. So, are you ready for it?
Yeah, thank you, Ketan, and thank you for the invitation. Absolute pleasure to get a chance to talk to you about this, and it also made me think, about some of the things we've been working on.
Sure. So I think in the current engagement where you are with the TFG for all these years, so our first question is regarding that only, where it is about the retail data transformation. So what is TFG's approach to data transformation in the retail space, and what are some key data initiatives which have worked well for you?
So before we maybe get to that, the first thing to consider is, for us, we start with what is our business strategy, as this will drive our technology strategy and therefore include topics such as data transformation. And everything we do in our business is aligned with what we call our business purpose, which is we're helping customers live their best lives. We cover a very broad range of categories and helping solve the daily needs of customers across a very broad front of product categories. You can literally find what you're looking for and even things you didn't know you could have from us. Now, to make that real, we have our business vision, which is delivering remarkable omni-channel experiences for our customers. And that simply means enabling customers to shop all our inventory and a broader range of offerings, regardless of where you are, enhancing convenience, loyalty, and the overall experience. Now, doing that well across 30 retail brands with different back-end operational systems is obviously a massive challenge. So data transformation then for us is much more of a means to an end, the end being our goal of being able to provide customers with a seamless experience. And also, we are beginning to use AI to provide personalized and targeted deals and offers, to drive up that engagement and shopping experience.
Right. So just to follow up on that, so when you are serving the customers, like you said, there are 30 odd brands where you are serving with different interactions to the customers must be happening. So can you give also throw some light on what are the different kind of platforms or interactions that happen with the customers across this 30 branch that you talked about?
So you kind of go into what we've done, especially around the initiative around Bash.com. So the launching of the Bash platform was a major milestone for us on our journey to make this omni-channel vision real, the vision I spoke about. So we got rid of almost 20 standalone e-commerce sites and replaced it with a single app-first digital platform built around a VTEX technical e-commerce platform. That gave us massive improvements in customer traffic, cross-shopping, especially across brands. So suddenly the consumer was exposed to everything we offer in one place. And that gave us massive conversion, customer retention, and obviously a revenue uplift. And it also allowed us to unlock major scale efficiencies in, for example, digital marketing. If you're spending your digital marketing in 20 places, it's never going to be as efficient as one single place. And that's been a massive leap forward. And we're now in the process of pushing this same technology platform that we've built around the Bash.com digital platform into our stores.
Right.
So that's helping our store staff enable customers to shop all our inventory regardless of where they are. And again, I spoke about our vision is enhancing convenience, loyalty, and overall experience. But balancing that traditional brick and mortar physical retail with pure online e-commerce is, as you can imagine, not easy. And we're also learning as we go along, and often the biggest challenge is human. As soon as you go into the physical realm, stores, you're talking tens of thousands of store staff. So things need to be clear, simple, but more importantly, very easy to use. So we're putting a big focus on that now going forward.
Right. So I think that's a great innovation journey that you talked about, where you had that platform for both from a consumer perspective. There was innovation, as well as you need to also, like you said rightly, think about the internal users of the platforms, which are the people in your stores who are gonna use that for serving the consumers. So while going through this innovation journey, what were you mentioned some challenges, but I want to ask the challenges considering the data and AI innovation specifically, and which other retail companies should be aware of, and any best practices frameworks which TFG followed during this journey.
Yes, so it's a good question. We tend to take a very pragmatic approach to things that can become very complex, as I sort of described. I think generally what we do is we start with asking, what business or customer problem are we trying to solve? And that's kind of the first step. And then from that, for example, take customer data, integration, unification. Our first challenge was, how do we bring very diverse data together? Point of sale, e-commerce, loyalty. We have a large in-house credit function. So, for example, for that, we've built a customer data lake architecture to house both structured and unstructured data in a unified way. On the product data side, on the other hand, our biggest challenge is finding ways to unify metadata across millions of SKUs, and they keep changing. So in fashion, you're bringing a new product all the time, and your range can change 6 times a year. So, for example, for this, we used more recently generative AI modeling to vectorize product description data on the one hand with image data, which we get from the back end of the online platform, in order to link similar products. So if you're looking at product A, B, and C, and D in the carousel are very similar. So we're trying to find practical ways to solve those. In terms of platforms and technologies, we're not married to any particular technology or vendor. So, for example, we use both AWS and Azure, or Kafka and Apache, and Databricks and Snowflake. So we use what we think is the best solution, I suppose, for the problem at hand, and not really married to, dogmatically to this technology or that.
Right. So there is, as you said, there is that use case selection which you said it's married with the choice of technology, but then you need to consider that you may have a multi-technology strategy, because you choose the technology according to the business problem that you may be solving for.
Correct. Yes.
That is the theme I could see which came out of that. So now, considering you talked about another angle to the bash.com is that there is an omni-channel digital play in place, and while an organization tries to do this, like TFG, like an organization which is trying to do this omni-channel thing or omni-channel experiences for the customer, there is always this key to balancing the traditional brick and mortar retail operations along with the demands of the e-commerce. So how do you balance an organization if they want to start this omni-channel journey? Then how do they balance these customer experiences?
Yes, it's not easy. As I said, one of the complications is, of course, as soon as you go into brick and mortar, you're into thousands of store staff, and it needs to be clear, simple, and very easy to use. I suppose an approach that's helped us in our thinking is to think of the two major customer journeys. If you kind of just start with customer journey now, a customer would shop, and we've concluded that you could take all the customer journeys and put them into two boxes. On the one hand, there's what we call unassisted as a customer journey. So that's typically you sit at home and you browse and you shop. And the other one is assisted. So this is where I'm in a store, I'm looking for a pair of Nikes, you haven't got my size, but somebody's helping me find it. Right. What we've said is and I think this is where many retailers are struggling, is those two things are often two worlds. So from an architecture and a data platform perspective, we said recognize those two journeys, but they must sit on the same data and platform. So the technology behind those must be completely unified. And for us, we use as far as possible one element across the two main shopping journeys. And that's really what we started calling a single selling platform. So your assisted and unassisted, we think about those as just different interfaces, but everything behind those interfaces is unified. And so far, that's worked reasonably well for us.
Right. So the key there is to have that unified data store from where whenever someone is accessing a brick and mortar query versus an e-commerce, the answer to the query or that data is via one single platform, which kind of makes it easier for you to do the balancing. Right.
Correct. Yes.
Right. So coming back to the technologies that you mentioned, like Snowflake, and then you are using Databricks and Azure, AWS. So when you are talking about this combination of business problems and tech that you plan to use, there is always a discussion of how do you build this data and AI roadmap, which ones maybe you come up with an approach defining a clear actionable roadmap for data and AI initiatives, which kind of align with these immediate business goals or long-term strategic objectives. So in your case, what were the key takeaways when you design such roadmap? What were the challenges to designing these roadmap activities? Then what are the things you looked at while designing this roadmap?
I suppose so. What I've kind of described in the previous answers, we don't kind of dogmatically look at it as a roadmap. We almost break it down into what we call primitives. What are the key primitives that we need to have in place in order to enable those two macro customer journeys and the interfaces, either unassisted or assisted. And really, once we've kind of done that, it kind of solves itself, because then I need to do thing number one, thing number two, and thing number three, and thing number three can't work without number one. So again, we don't follow any fixed methodology in that sense. And as I said, certainly don't do the traditional, we going down this technology vendor and now you have to implement module 1, module 2, module 3. The world's become a lot more plural and in a way complex, but also more flexible in terms of solutions you could put together.
Right. So have you seen, just for example, the AI use cases, like the generative AI use case that you talked about, where you use the images and captioning and for the search, you talked about that. So while building these AI use cases from a roadmap perspective, have you seen that a POC kind of an approach or point of view POC approach is better as compared to directly going for the minimal viable product thing?
Yeah, so everything, if you start talking about AI solutions, I suppose, again, we take a pragmatic approach. What are the big problems we're trying to solve? And this technology is changing very quickly. So I think if you kind of dip a little bit into those choices and, around architecture, roadmaps, even infrastructure, and then applications. I think a big trend that we're beginning to see is the lines are getting blurred between infrastructure and cloud, as we kind of traditionally saw it in applications. So for us, a big theme at the moment is, how can we use AI as almost a translation layer between what traditionally was called applications, I suppose, and then, the infrastructure layer. I suppose another big theme that we're seeing and that we think will be one of the biggest disruptors in the next year or two is how agentic AI in particular is beginning to disrupt the existing SaaS software companies in a big way. So if I give you an example, traditionally as a large retailer, you'll have supply chain tools, planning and merchandising. You've got to order products, you've got to get them into a warehouse, you've got to move them from a warehouse to a store, or pick them and get them to a customer's home. Now, traditionally, on a SaaS way of thinking, you would replace those things every 5 to 10 years, and the SaaS players will tell you you have to upgrade, or you lose your support, and so on and so on. So our new way of thinking is not to replace that SaaS layer. I mean, there's hundreds of millions in cost and years of effort to replace, for example, an ERP. And our approach, if I simplify this, is looking at, can we use agentic AI as a layer, maybe working with an RPA layer, working with our existing ERP and SaaS software layers. So we're busy at the moment kind of rethinking, I suppose, the entire architecture in a way.
Right. And that's going to be my next question regarding the architecture, like you mentioned that. So while re-architecting this, I guess you need to look at the evaluation of different cloud-based platforms. So how do you evaluate cloud-based data platforms considering the right data architecture choices, cost/performance?
Yeah, so it's a little bit, what I said is I suppose you have to stand back. Traditionally, we thought infrastructure on the one side, including cloud, and you could throw into infrastructure, on-prem databases and so on, and then separate from that, applications on this side. So I think where our thinking is shifting quite quickly is that those lines are blurred. And I think this is where generative AI is beginning to, I use the word almost, a translation layer between the two. So again, it's very difficult. We're not married to any particular technology, AWS cloud or Azure, whatever. We're thinking almost from the front to the back now, So what does it mean if we put an agentic layer in that does some of the supply chain solutions, which are difficult and complex in a retail business with millions of things moving around, and then you kind of work your way back, and that will lead you to an answer in terms of what, cloud infrastructure at the back needs to look like. And these things are often very, very bundled.
Right. So I can see that the agentic theme with the translation layer is something that where you think is going to be the disruptor with the integrations with different complex systems, like the example you gave about the supply chain.
Exactly.
That is coming up as a theme.
And that's kind of the new, everybody's been working on, let's call it the customer service theme. And bots getting, better and better, and agentic, really superpowering your bots and your customer interactions. And I think that's kind of just hyper accelerate.
Right.
What I'm saying is we're beginning to now seriously look at other areas where supply chain, obviously in a retail business, is massive. Availability, stock, efficiencies, everything is built into that, leading to profitability. And I think that for us is the real next frontier, so to speak, or especially the newer agentic AI technologies that are emerging.
Right. And so that comes to the next question is like, when you are doing all these things, then there is always a question of data governance and compliance that you need to do while serving the customers. So how should retailers ensure data integrity, which is very crucial for a supply chain kind of a use case, and governance, and what are some of the cross-border data challenges that maybe you have faced when you are serving across regions, like for example UK or South Africa or some other regions?
Obviously, this is a hot topic. Everybody loses sleep about this. I think the media is full of horror stories of what can go wrong if you miss this. I think, again, with us, it starts with clearly defining your data and information security strategy. What is it you're trying to do? And then I think we've really spent time the last year to sharpen that and make it very clear. So we went through a process to determine a number of what we call key information security strategy pillars.
Right.
And to give you an example there for us, pillar number 1, we called the 80-20 principle. So that means often going after the critical risks, which could be 20% of the workload, but covers 80% of the large risks.
That's a good way to.
And practically that helped us using this approach is we found that the CIS controls framework is actually pretty good. You go to the top 5, that are 20% of the workload, but it does cover 80% of the large risks. So that's kind of one side of it. I suppose the other side of it, we've also switched spend in the last year or so to radically increase ethical hacking volume, which is frequency, intensity, both from internal teams, so we're building our own competency, and an external party. So basically, you pay somebody to try and break in, and all I can say is we've had very good results of that so far. They always find weaknesses, and then we move very quickly to close those gaps.
Right. And so you talked about initially when we were discussing, so you talked about unified data store which you kind of brought in. So was this, so just adding on to this question, so was this, when you built that unified data store, so was this related to different regions? You had different unified data stores on which you did governance, or it was a one particular layer across regions?
No, so our data governance and our data and information security strategy covers all regions. So same principles applies to everybody. So for example, we choose the CIS control framework as our global standard.
Okay.
And each region has to comply with those standards. And then within that, we leave freedom of movement. To choose the appropriate technologies and partnerships in each of the regions.
Right. And from a reporting standpoint, with this CIS framework being applied, so you have like dashboards or health reports that come out periodically to just assess the risk of the 80-20 that you talked about, or how does that periodic monitoring works?
We've got a very strong internal audit function. And we kind of want to separate, responsibilities there, that you don't want the technology guys to mark their own homework, so to speak. So we've put that into internal audit, and internal audit periodically runs, a lot of those checks. In fact, a lot of the ethical hacking I spoke about, right, we put that money into the internal audit side. So if you give it to the technology guys, you're going to be marking your own homework. So we've got a proper delegation of authority in that sense. Separation of decision power.
Right. And just asking from a skills perspective, that is it tough to get somebody like having a sound understanding of the retail domain and the ethical security hacking parts of it, or
one of our biggest challenges at the moment. So we're looking at different operating models at the moment. It's just never ending. You can never find enough of the right skilled people, and there's a huge shortage globally on that, on that front at the moment. So it's a very large challenge, I think, for most organizations.
Right, right, right. So coming to next is you deal with people day in day out as part of the TFG group who are like consuming your products, coming in, buying in. So there is a lot of consumer behavior, I'm sure, and personalization that you are bringing to the experiences after learning about the consumer behavior. So if an organization has to plan for hyper personalization, let's say in fashion retail industry through AI analytics and automation, then what are your thoughts on that? Have you tried it? What were your experiences, or some of the things that should be kept in mind while designing these pipelines?
Yeah, it's a good question. In retail, we sit on vast amounts of data. Just to give an example, just in the South African market on 3,500 stores, we'll do up to 500,000 transactions a day through the point of sale, and millions of people going through the doors every day. Online, you could do, 40, 50, 60,000 transactions on a slow day. So point one for us was investing in that loyalty program I mentioned, because you've got to find a way to capture the data. So that's kind of the real starting point. And we've been doing that for a number of years. So that's quite mature, I would say. We've also been using machine learning for a number of years. So we're quite advanced in terms of using that for predictive modeling and powering our marketing engines.
Right.
All the way from product recommenders to actually adjusting when we send you an email, for example, looking at the structure of the title, not just, the content. How do we get up the open rates and so on and so on. And again, I think fair to say we're now seeing that generative AI is coming through with some brilliant tools to enhance that customer experience. So, we're playing with or experimenting at the moment in the online space with AI tools where you can ask, for example, a question while you're shopping, what should I wear to a party with a Greek island theme? And then this will help you curate your wardrobe based on your preferences. We know you male, we know you're female. We're going to take all of that preference into account, plus the range of appropriate products, and that's I think that's a massive thing. So in a way, you're beginning to see that some of what people like Shein has pioneered, in terms of their customer experience and AI-based optimization of curating what you see and what you experience. I think it's becoming commoditized, just the sheer flood of tools that are now available to everybody else.
Right. So I think then it's about also understanding you as a company to understand your consumer base, and then based on the use case, maybe choose that tool where you want to have the customer touch points.
Correct. Yes.
Yes. Yes. So coming to the last question that we have for you is, you already talked about one future theme that you see is the agentic AI theme coming in, but from a tech-enabled fashion retail customer experience, how do you see the customer experience would look like in the future, something in like 2035, or what are some of the ways that consumers are interacting with the technology in fashion retail stores, and what role do you see, more role you see AI playing in it?
Ketan, you've left the most difficult question for last. I think, in answering that, maybe I'll go back to the wisdom we got from Jeff Bezos when he said he doesn't know exactly what will change in 10 years, but he could tell you what won't change. And I think he's right. In our world, in retail, consumer business, customers will still want good value. They will want it to be available. They don't want to wait too long. And they want it to be easily accessible, easy to shop, and an experience that makes them feel known and understood. So So I think for us, kingpin would be that that's not going to change, and we adjusting our strategies to keep delivering on that. Just to get back to you also, what is the role of AI and all of that? And I think we've touched on many of these things.
Yes.
I think AI in many ways will enable this. Just think of a couple of examples. Those AI-powered customer interaction tools. AI co-pilots that can dynamically generate responses, recommendations without any business rules. That's super powerful. Some of that agentic stuff I spoke about, self-optimizing applications, optimizing customer journeys in real time without human intervention. And then, as always, in order to give the customer value, you need efficiency. So I think through agentic AI automation, in some of the use cases I've kind of described, we're looking at, in the supply chain side, I think it's going to be massive. So you cannot ignore, I think, automation and efficiency in putting all of that back together.
Right. So I just have one more, just last follow-up question on that is, have you used AI for code generation or assisted code generations with the developers, and what was your experience with it, and what's your take on that?
Yes, the short answer is yes, we use it extensively. And again, I don't want to, punt any one particular technology, and this stuff is moving so fast.
In general,
yeah. So, and this is a bit my personal view. I don't think we close to a point where you have zero code. I think that's still some way off. But again, what it's done is, and you can see this, all over some of these technologies we're working with, is it's radically speeding up the pace of innovation and digital innovation and change. So it's helping us shorten the lead times.
Right.
And that, I think, and again, is back to a degree of automation, which is efficiency and speed, which is critical.
Yes. I think that directly is affecting the productivity improvements as well when you talk about the efficiency at speed or at scale. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. So thank you, Jack. Thank you very much for patiently answering all our questions and taking us through this journey of data and AI in retail, which you have had over the years. And I think there were 3 to 4 key things that has come out of this. One is you see the use of agentic AI coming in, with supply chain being the most critical thing which is getting affected, and bringing some more efficiency and speed on the use cases. Then you talked about some of the how to get around some of the challenges regarding when you want to build an omni-channel platform, and how did you build it, the bash.com, and how was the experience of customers with it, how do you strike the balance. Then I think what came out was the governance and compliance, data governance, where you said that CIS framework is something that has been very helpful for you, where and across regions that you have your processes and internal audits which kind of combine together to help you attain that state, along with the ethical hacking part of it for achieving that data governance, and of course the consumer behavior, where you see that there is a lot of value with this hyper personalization things which is getting commoditized, but then there is a value to it for the customer interaction.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good summary.
Yes. And we did not use ChatGPT for the summarization.
Brilliant. Well done.
Yes.
It's more authentic that way. So
yes.
Brilliant.
Yes. So thank you very much.